Hey all subs and visitors. This video is I'm going to be looking into Australia. And Australia is a little bit tricky because it's only so far back you can go. Australia has a very hidden past, and it's not easy when you're just looking at Australia, there's not a lot to work with. This is comparing to worldwide events, a very small window to look into. So I'm going to start at 1854, December the 3rd, uh, which was the Eureka Stockade. The Eureka Rebellion was a series of events involving gold miners who revolted against the British colonial administration during the Victorian gold rush. Okay, so what I did was I started there and I added 48 years and I jumped over to 1902, which was the Boer War of South Africa, 1899 to 1902. So it ended in 1902. And around 1,500 Australian men and women, most of whom were born between 1870 and 1880, served in eight contingents raised in individual Australian colonies through the duration of the Second Boer War in South Africa between October 1899 and May 1902. So then I jumped forward another 48 years, and that brings me out to 1950, where Australia becomes involved in the Korean War. And also in 1950, the Menzies government secured a US $100 million loan from the World Bank. So Australia, started to really make moves towards being involved in all sorts of foreign corporations. So 1998, cabinet papers reveal Australia was on the path to war in Iraq. So that was another 48 years. I jumped forward from 1950 to 1998. And the interesting thing is that it's 144 years from 1854 to 1998. And if you add another 48 years, that brings you out to 2046. The next event that I began from, adding 46 years, was 1808. 26th of January 1808, the Rum Rebellion was a coup d'etat in the British penal colony of New South Wales, where George Johnson played a key role in the only successful armed takeover of government in Australia's recorded history. George Johnson later sailed for England and was found guilty of mutiny. Okay, so you add another 46 years and you land again at 1854 Eureka Stockade Rebellion. Okay, and I already explained what that was. Okay, so jump forward another 46 years brings us to 1900, where the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act UK is passed, and that's also the year of the Boxer Rebellion. Okay, so jumping another 46 years brings us obviously to 1946, which is the Pilbara Strike, which is one of the most dramatic moments in Australia's Indigenous history. Aboriginal people not only defied the owners of pastoral stations in northwest Western Australia by demanding better wages and conditions, but also sought to win independence from their colonial masters. Okay, so the time frame that I looked at was 1808 to 1946, and I'm doing these things just looking at events and spacing time in between, and later on I realized that that's 138 years. So that was interesting as well. And you add another 46 years onto 1946, and that brings us to 1992. About 100,000 people shut down the centre of Melbourne on November 10 in protest against the radical industrial reforms of newly elected Victoria State Premier Jeff Kennett. The demonstration was said to be the largest since Vietnam War, and thousands more participated in smaller rallies in cities and towns across Victoria. And I find it quite remarkable when you look at older photos of Australia in the archives online. Like this photo here in 1879 of Millers Point in New South Wales, Australia. It looks highly populated. It probably won't show that great on the screen, but across the water there, there's just so many buildings, homes, houses, and yeah, like how advanced quickly things became advanced when Australia was populated by convicts in 1788, managed to produce a whole load of offspring, and of course, additional people arriving over time. But I mean, that's not even 100 years, and it's so populated. 1873, Woolloomooloo. Look at it. I mean, there's plenty other photos that you can find online that show these buildings and dirt roads and this horse and cart going on. A whole thing of horses being able to bear loads and carry all this building material, and where did they do the work? And it's crazy, like this one here in Alexandria, New South Wales, in 1902, Henderson Road. I worked in Alexandria, used to work there. And then there's Erskine Street in Sydney, Australia, 1902, and there's the horse and cart, and people parking their horses and carts out the front of these structures. And if you look to the right, just behind the horse and cart, at the building that's across the street, you can see the stained brickwork, and it looks as if it has been buried and it's been dug up and reused. And look at these incredible buildings on Elizabeth Street in 1919. And this is a little later, the date there, but even prior to that, everywhere I look in the mid 1800s around Australia, they seem to spread out pretty quickly and populate all territories. Corner of King and George Street in 1911, quite populated on the streets there, while other pictures look like there's hardly anyone. It's like they call everybody out for the photo, right? Get on the street, we've got to get this photo. Surrey Hills, New South Wales, Australia, 1917. You can see there's dirt roads there. Cleveland Street, overbridge in this photo. There's the tram lines there, and dirt roads. There's this one of Burke Street in Melbourne, 1860. And all these buildings. I mean, look at it. It's just this dirt road and these buildings built on platforms there. St. Francis Church, which was, I don't know if it was completed, how long it was before 1860. I know it was, but Melbourne, 1860, this image of St. Francis Church, beautifully built with dirt roads surrounding it. I mean, look at the craftsmanship in the building here in Crown Street Public School in Surrey Hills, which is a heritage listed building. I love this photo here. A lot of these buildings here in this image are still there today, and the children sitting in the windows. I mean, there's not even any glass in there. And if you've ever dealt with summer in Australia, you'll know how many flies you get in your house if you don't have fly screens. And some might argue that there's no windows because the buildings are still being constructed. But you can see that the step in front of the doorway is quite worn down. And here's traffic on Sydney's Pyrmont Bridge in the 1880s. I don't know exactly what date, but look at all the horses and carts and all the buildings behind them. I mean, there's not one single car on the road there, yet they've managed to build all of these buildings up behind in the background there. So the first true cars made in Australia were steam cars in 1896, and I've looked at 1896 a fair bit. I have found that date fun to work from. So these flimsy little cars that can barely carry two people would have been no use in moving large amounts of material around in order to build these fantastic buildings. When these buildings were built prior to 1896, early on. So, it is interesting when you look at this stuff. It kind of makes you laugh, really. And it looks to me like, all of these places around the world that were conquered were taken over, repurposed, and false history was fed to the public. Being a convict and being sent to Australia would have been one of the most awful experiences for these people. And my fifth great grandmother was a convict, and she was sent to Australia for the theft of a teacup. So, and she was, I think she was like 14 or 16 years old. So you can only imagine being that age. And, I don't think families, they were so poor, they didn't really fight. What could you do? They come and take your children and off they go. They're put into the courts and sentenced as guilty and sent off to a foreign land. And at 14 years old, that's perfect stock for breeding. Send young women to repopulate. Anyhow, I might look more into Australia. Um, just got to try and find certain key elements to look into. But all of the things that I looked into were basically searching certain titles of information and then finding these even patterns of years in between by adding, increments of, say, what was it, 48 years and 46 years. They were the natural time spans that I found. And I put them together and realized, okay, there's 144 years, there's 138 years. I mean, to me, this just further demonstrates how we live in a coded reality. Anyway, hope you're all well, and I'll catch you on the next one.